Welcome to Beer and Iron's Easy Chunk Pumpkin Chili Recipe. We're going to make a thick and delicious chili with a whole pie pumpkin. It's going to have all the chili flavor you'd expect in a chili recipe, with chunks of soft and pumpkin-y pumpkin, but all at the same time, not so pumpkin-y that the pumpkin tastes or feels out of place. This pumpkin chili is like fall in your bowl. First, let's cover the ingredients. I'm going to use a pound of pork sausage. Italian style is my preference. 1 pound of ground beef, 1 whole onion. Use about 3 to 6 cloves of smashed and diced garlic. More or less, that's up to you. We're going to use some peppers in our chili. You could use bell pepper, maybe even Anaheim, or you could use a poblano chili, or 2. It's totally up to you. I've fallen in love with these poblano chilies, and now it's a go-to for me, and I use it often to substitute for bell peppers. I'm going to use both bell peppers and poblano in this recipe. 2 15-ounce cans of black beans. Be sure to drain and rinse those dudes. 1 14.5-ounce can of diced fire-roasted tomatoes. If you can't find fire-roasted, get the regular. And the pumpkin. Not really a carving-size pumpkin, but a pie pumpkin. We're not going to complicate this recipe with weight and size and whatnot. Any pie pumpkin will do okay. One that you can hold on to with your hand. We can decide on how much pumpkin by the size of the Dutch oven we'll use. A good chili recipe is full of spices and seasonings, and this one is no exceptions. You're going to need some chili powder, garlic powder, onion powder, oregano, smoked paprika, ground cumin, pepper. I love grinding my own peppercorns. Pre-ground pepper works a-okay. And a dark cocoa powder. Don't use the sweet stuff. Let's talk about that pumpkin. Peeling that dude can be a booger if you have the wrong peeler. I use one of these heavy-duty jobs here. The peeling of that pumpkin is completely edible, but I choose to peel the pumpkin. Sometimes the peel's texture can be a bit noticeable in the chili. Don't cut the bottom or the top off yet. Just skin that dude down to his birthday suit, naked as a jaybird. Get a knife capable of cutting off the top of that pumpkin. Then do a Sleepy Hollow on that pumpkin. Cut his head right off. From here, we're going to use a smaller knife. A paring knife or other small blade will do the trick. Make a hole in the top of the pumpkin and remove the seeds and that stringy stuff all up on the inside. Now what we have is a naked, hollowed-out pumpkin missing his head, but still has his bottom. Leave that bottom where it's at for now. Cut from the pumpkin's top opening to the bottom, but not all the way through. We just want to create some cuts about 1 inch apart all the way around. We're creating little crescent sections of the pumpkin. Once you've gone all the way around the pumpkin and have about 14 to 16 cuts, open that dude up and break off the pieces from the bottom blossom end of the pumpkin. If you're enjoying this video up to now, consider giving us a thumbs up, clicking on that little subscribe button, and then giving a little ding on that dinner bell. Discard the bottom or the blossom end of that pumpkin. Now we have all these crescent cut pieces. Just line them up and cut the pumpkin into chunks. Don't worry about sizes, just make a bunch of chunks. We're going to be brining these pumpkin chunks to flavor them through and through. And I'm going to use a nice pumpkin brew from a local brewery. This one from McDuff's Brewery Company called Smashin' Pumpkin is perfect. My basic brine recipe is 12 ounces of beer to 1 tablespoon of salt. I'm going to use about 3 cups, or the equivalent of 2 12-ounce beers, 24 ounces. I'm going to be adding about 2 tablespoons of salt. A zipper bag works great for this. Dump all the chunks of pumpkin and let them brine for a few hours or even up to a day. Brining the chunks of pumpkin is optional. Pumpkin usually needs a bit of help to coax the flavor out of it. In a pie, we'd add cinnamon, nutmeg, allspice, or something like that. But these spices won't work well in chili. I'm going to coach that flavor out with a bit of salt, and that pumpkin beer will find its way deep into those pumpkin chunks as well. Let's prep the vegetables. It's up to you on the pepper or chili. I'm going to use both in this pumpkin chili I'm creating. One or the other or both. It's up to you. I'll separate the onions and the garlic out together. And the peppers I'm going to keep separate as well. Get all the spices and seasoning mixed up. 2 tablespoons of chili powder. 1 tablespoon of smoked paprika. 2 tablespoons of dark cocoa powder, but don't use the sweet stuff. 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. 1 teaspoon of onion powder. 1 teaspoon of ground cumin. 1 teaspoon of dried oregano. A teaspoon of black pepper. As always, pepper to taste. Whisk all the ingredients together. You can use a whisk or you can use a spoon. A spoon does the trick real well. Optional is 1/4 cup of white flour. Don't add this to the seasoning. Keep this separate. If I feel the chili turns out a bit too watery or wet, I'll add 1/4 cup of white flour to thicken things up. You're going to salt to taste, but don't add salt to the seasoning. Now let's cook some chili. I'm going to be using my 7-quart cast iron Dutch oven. A 5-quart cast iron Dutch oven will work perfect. I'm going to use my 7-quart to cook this chili recipe. Have you seen one of these dudes? This is what I call an in-the-pot meat chopper. I found this one on Walk with Talk's YouTube channel. I'll give a link to both in the description. Both are worth checking out. I'm going to show you how I use this meat chopper. First, the pork. It has all the fat and flavor. Take that sausage and create a large sausage patty of sorts and set it into the hot, unoiled, and ungreased Dutch oven. I use my meat chopper to flatten out the meat as much as possible so I can keep as much of it in contact with that wicked hot cast iron Dutch oven. I want that meat to sear. I want it to brown and caramelize. That browning and caramelization is where we're going to get some of the flavor for our chili. I won't go into great detail about this, but trust me on this one. Browning the pork and later the beef sure adds a lot of flavor to this recipe. After a bit, flip the pork over. Do you see that browning? See that caramelization? This is one of the secrets to a great chili. I'm not going to break it apart just yet. After a bit of time to let the other side brown, use your spatula or this meat chopper to break up the pork. The fat's going to render, and we'll use that fat to sear our ground beef in just a second. Once the pork is browned and all ground up, just set it in a bowl nearby with a paper towel. It'll drain just fine. There's a lot of fat found in a pound of pork sausage. We want some of that flavor. And no, more fat does not mean more flavor. Now we're going to add the beef. Use that meat chopper to flatten out that beef in that pot. Don't break it apart yet. Beef has a lot of moisture. We don't want that moisture to flow just yet. We want that seared caramelization to occur, almost like a grilled hamburger patty. Just like that. Perfect. Beef isn't going to stay together like that pork sausage did. Just flip it in pieces if you need to. We're going to let some of that moisture steam off. Then we'll use the meat chopper or the spatula to break it all apart. Move the seared and browned beef over and let it drain. I just place another paper towel over that pork sausage and top it all with that beef. Now we're ready to add the onion and the garlic to that hot pot. If the onions and garlic aren't searing up like you think they should be, add a little bit of beer and get the party started. Once the onions are sautéed and the pot has been deglazed, add those peppers. Cook the peppers for a bit and then turn the heat down to low, or just remove the pot from the heat altogether. We're about to pull this dude together. Add the beef and the pork back to the pot. We're about to add the seasonings. I need to add a bit of moisture first, and that can of fire-roasted tomatoes has just the perfect moisture to get everything started. Mix everything about. Now dump the seasonings into the pot and mix it all about again. Now the house is starting to smell like chili. Add the drained and rinsed black beans and mix it all about again. We're about ready to add the pumpkin chunks. Now, how much pumpkin are we going to add to this recipe? That's the question. The answer is, how much will that Dutch oven hold? Add enough pumpkin to fill the pot up to adding all the pumpkin. This 7-quart pot has enough room for all the pumpkin, and a 5-quart will most likely have enough room as well. And again, mix it all about. Our heat is still on low. We've mixed up all the ingredients to that pot except for the beer. Before we add the beer, smooth out all the ingredients. Get the ingredients leveled off. Now we're going to add our pumpkin beer, but we're only going to add it up to the level of the ingredients, just up to the surface of the leveled off ingredients. Now one more time, mix everything up together. Now put the lid on that pot and we're going to let it start cooking. I'm going to leave a little bit of a vent hole here. When it starts to steam, we're going to check it out. Does it look too thin or too watery? If you think it's a bit too watery or too thin, go ahead and add that 1/4 cup of white flour to the pot. Mix the flour in with the chili. Now we're going to check for the saltiness. We've got some brined pumpkin chunks, 2 cans of black beans, and those fire-roasted tomatoes, all of which have some sort of salt in them. We don't want to make it too salty. We just want it perfect. Taste for saltiness. Is it perfect? Good. If it's not, add some. Just enough though. Return the lid to the pot and continue cooking on a low heat. It won't take long from here. How do you know when this chili is done? My method is to check the pumpkin. If the pumpkin chunks are soft and just right, then the chili's done. That's some nice and thick, stick to your ribs kind of chili right there, I tell you what. It's time to eat. I didn't add any spiciness to this chili. Mild, medium, hot, it's up to you. My family likes it mild. I like it about medium. I usually add some hot peppers afterwards. They're easier to remove for those who prefer a mild chili. Add a few green onions to dress up how it looks and also how it tastes. You can serve this chili with some rice or some cornbread. Add some cheese. I'm adding a bit of spicy chili powder here. I like it hot, but not too hot. I hope you've enjoyed this pumpkin chili recipe. My name is Sule, and I love to share the magic that comes out of my black pots and pans. Y'all keep on cooking in those black beauties and enjoying those frosted glasses of that fermented barley pop. We'll see you next time on beerandiron.com. Hey, y'all got any more beer? My mouth is lit up.